It was the kind of Saturday morning you dream about during the grinding workweek, cloudless, bright, and full of the lazy hum of suburban peace. The street shimmered with the gentle heat rising off the blacktop, lined by carefully tended lawns and chalk doodles left behind by kids with nowhere better to be. I sat on the front porch, coffee in hand, watching Jesse crouch at the edge of the driveway with a rainbow of sidewalk chalk scattered around him. His tiny fingers clutched a thick yellow stick as he scribbled scales across the back of a purple dinosaur, the creature's smiling mouth stretching wide across 2 sidewalk slabs. "Looking good, buddy," I called. Jesse beamed up at me, his face smudged with blue and green chalk dust. He waved his masterpiece toward me with a proud little flourish. "That's a T-Rex, Daddy. But nicer. He doesn't eat people. He just eats cupcakes." I laughed and shook my head. Kids. Somehow, in Jesse's world, even the most fearsome things had a good side. I took another sip of coffee and let the warm morning sink into my bones. From the porch, Erica waved a watering can back and forth across the flower beds, humming to herself. It was a picture-perfect, no-worries day. At least, it should have been. I noticed it before I heard it, a dark shape crawling slowly down the street, moving like a shark through still water. A black Dodge Durango, windows tinted darker than legal, unmarked, without a front license plate. It wasn't a neighbor's car. I knew every car on this street. Hell, half the families had been here for 10 years or more. And whoever was behind that wheel wasn't lost. They were moving too deliberately, slowing in front of each house, studying the driveways. I set my coffee down. The Durango crept closer to our house and finally rolled to a stop right in front of our driveway. The engine idled, a low, guttural growl vibrating through the air. Jesse didn't notice. He was too busy coloring the T-Rex's cupcake pink. But I stood up. My instincts, honed sharper than I liked to admit from a different life long before mortgages and sprinklers, started screaming. Erica paused too, standing rigid in the flower bed, the watering can tilted sideways, forgotten. The front doors of the SUV opened in unison. 2 men stepped out, both heavy-set, tactical vests strapped over black polos, cargo pants tucked into boots. The vests were marked with big block letters. HOA Enforcement Division. My heart thudded once, hard. There was no such thing. The taller of the 2, a bald man with dark sunglasses and a jaw like a meat cleaver, barked something into a handheld radio clipped to his vest. The other man, stocky and bearded, adjusted the strap on what looked disturbingly like a holster under his jacket. The bald man turned toward Jesse, still hunched happily over his chalk masterpiece, and strode forward. "Hey, kid," he barked. Jesse startled and looked up, blinking at the 2 looming men. The chalk dropped from his hand, rolling across the sidewalk. I was already moving, stepping off the porch and closing the distance fast. "What's the problem here?" I demanded, keeping my voice level. The bald man barely glanced at me. He kept his gaze locked on Jesse, sneering down at him like he was looking at dog crap on a shoe. "This property's in violation," he said. "Defacement of public walkways. Under Code 17B. Immediate citation issued." I stared at him, stunned for half a second. "Chalk," I said. "He's drawing with chalk. It washes off with a hose." The second man stepped forward, pulling a clipboard from under his arm and waving it in my face. "This is a homeowners association property. All sidewalks are covered under HOA covenant restrictions. Vandalism is a felony under Section 31. There was so much wrong in those 2 sentences I didn't know where to start. First, our HOA didn't cover sidewalks, the city did. Second, there was no Section 31. Third, and most important, actual HOA violations don't come with tactical vests and handguns. Behind me, Erica had dropped the watering can and pulled out her phone, hitting record. Good girl. I stood between Jesse and the 2 men now, heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't a citation. This wasn't a warning. This was something else. I planted my feet. "You're not with our HOA," I said flatly. "You're not city workers. Who are you?" The bald man smirked. He reached into a side pocket and flashed a plastic badge for half a second, fast enough to make an impression but not long enough for scrutiny. It was a cheap laminate printout, like a kid's Halloween costume prop. "Step aside," he ordered. Your child is in violation. He needs to come with us for processing. 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 I felt a cold shot of adrenaline flush through my veins. Jesse whimpered and tugged on my jeans, trying to hide behind me. You're not taking him anywhere, I said, my voice low and sharp. The bearded man moved subtly, hand drifting toward the weapon under his vest. The bald man took another step forward. I realized with a sick, heavy certainty, they weren't trying to give us a ticket. They were trying to take Jesse. Erica, recording furiously from the porch, screamed, "Real cops are on the way! You're being filmed!" For a flicker of a second, I saw hesitation in their eyes. A crack in the mask. But then the bald man snarled and lunged forward, right at Jesse. I moved, shoving Jesse behind me, but the bald man was faster than I expected. His hand shot out, not toward me, not toward Erica, but toward Jesse. He grabbed Jesse by the arm and yanked hard. There was a sickening pop sound, and Jesse screamed, a high, thin, animal sound that turned my blood to ice. The bald man wasn't gentle. He jerked Jesse off his feet like he was hauling a sandbag, slamming the boy into the sidewalk with a brutal thud. Jesse's head hit concrete. Blood blossomed instantly across the chalk drawing, staining the T-Rex's cupcake bright red. For one horrifying second, Jesse just lay there, stunned, gasping, broken. Then the bald man reached for the weapon at his hip. I reacted without thinking, years of instincts kicking in hard. I surged forward, tackling the bald man with everything I had, driving him back toward the Durango. We smashed into the fender, and the man grunted in surprise. Erica screamed Jesse's name, running to him. The second man, the bearded one, ripped his own weapon free, aiming it toward me. And that's when the whole world exploded in flashing blue and red. Real police SUVs screamed around the corner, tires screeching. Doors flew open. Real officers in tactical gear spilled out, weapons raised. Down. Hands where we can see them. Down now. The fake HOA agents froze, caught mid-crime, mid-kidnapping. I dropped to my knees, arms out, keeping myself between Jesse and whatever was coming next. The bald man snarled under his breath, but he let the real cops cuff him without a fight. The bearded man tried to run. He made it 5 steps before he was tackled so hard I heard bones crack. Erica scooped Jesse into her arms, cradling his tiny broken body against her chest, sobbing. And I knelt there in the driveway, staring at the blood mixing with the melted chalk on the concrete, and knew nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The street was chaos now, a swirl of shouting officers, flashing lights, and stunned neighbors spilling out onto porches, clutching coffee mugs and phones, trying to piece together what the hell had just happened. One of the officers, a tall woman with her hair pulled into a tight bun, rushed over to us. "Sir, you're hurt," she said, reaching for my arm. I hadn't even realized my elbow was torn open, dripping blood down my forearm. "I'm fine," I snapped, pushing past her. "It's my son. Help my son." Erica knelt on the sidewalk, rocking Jesse gently. His face was pale, eyes fluttering half shut. Blood matted his hair at the temple, and he whimpered with every tiny movement. "Stay with us, Jesse," Erica begged, her voice cracking. "Stay with Mommy." The officer dropped to one knee beside them, pulling a small flashlight from her belt and checking Jesse's pupils. "EMS is en route," she said, speaking into her radio. "Pediatric head trauma, possible dislocation of the arm." 2 other officers hauled the bald man to his feet, the fake enforcer who'd grabbed Jesse. His sunglasses had fallen off, revealing cold, pitiless blue eyes that locked onto me with something between hatred and fear. "Who sent you?" I barked. He smiled, a slow, mocking grin, and said nothing. Another officer shoved him toward a patrol SUV. Metal handcuffs gleamed around his wrists. Across the lawn, the second fake was already being stuffed into a different cruiser, his face a bloody ruin from the tackle. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt an icy pit open up inside me. Something about this wasn't random. Something much, much worse was happening. The ambulance wailed into view barely 3 minutes later, tires squealing. 2 paramedics, young, efficient, flew out the back, gear in hand. They rushed to Jesse. 7-year-old male, head trauma, possible dislocation, the officer briefed them. No loss of consciousness. responsive but dazed. I hovered nearby, feeling useless and frantic, hands clenching and unclenching. "Sir, we need space," one paramedic said gently but firmly. I staggered back as they worked, securing Jesse's tiny body to a spinal board, wrapping his head in padded restraints, starting in 4 with terrifying speed. Erica refused to let go of his hand even as they lifted him onto the gurney. One of the paramedics caught my eye. "You coming with us, Dad?" "Yes," I croaked. Erica squeezed my arm. "I'll stay here," she whispered, voice shaking. "I'll work with the police." "You go with him." I kissed her forehead and climbed into the back of the ambulance just as the doors slammed shut. As the ambulance rocketed toward the hospital, sirens blaring, I stared down at Jesse's bloodied face and made a silent vow. Whoever did this, whoever sent those men, I will burn their whole damn world down. It was 6 hours later when the detectives finally got to me. Jesse was stable, a minor concussion, a dislocated shoulder reset under sedation. No permanent damage, thank God. I sat in a tiny hospital conference room, wearing a stained t-shirt, every muscle vibrating with barely restrained rage. Detective Reynolds, a grizzled man with permanent frown lines, slid into the chair across from me. He flipped open a notebook. "We've got the 2 suspects in custody," he said. "No IDs. Fake names, fake HOA uniforms, fake badges. Not a single legit credential between them." "Who are they?" I demanded. "Working on it. Prints are running through the system. But here's the kicker." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "They lawyered up the second they hit booking. Same attorney. Expensive one, too. Flown in from out of state." I stared at him. "Which means what?" "It means somebody's bankrolling them. Somebody big. And they're scared." Reynolds rubbed a hand over his jaw. "And here's the real bad news. This wasn't random." I swallowed hard. "You're saying they weren't just some nutjobs pretending to be HOA?" He shook his head. "They had files, photos, timetables. Your kid, your wife. Hell, they even had the route your son takes to school mapped out." The room spun slightly. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "Who?" I rasped. Reynolds looked grim. "We're trying to find out. But this wasn't a simple kidnapping. This was professional." He closed his notebook. "And whoever they work for isn't finished." It didn't take long for the real HOA to catch wind of the situation. By Monday morning, they called an emergency town meeting at the clubhouse. The first time they'd managed to get every homeowner packed into one room since the annual barbecue 5 years ago. Linda Harrington, HOA president for life, self-appointed queen of Pine Ridge Estates, stood at the podium, clutching a folder of neatly printed bullet points. She was livid, not with the fake agents, not with the attack on my son, but that someone had dared misuse the sacred name of her HOA. "I want to make this perfectly clear," she shrilled into the microphone. "The Homeowners Association had no involvement in this incident. We do not authorize enforcement beyond property letters. We do not condone vigilantism." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Linda flipped a page in her notes. "We will be cooperating fully with the police investigation. Any residents approached by unauthorized individuals should report it immediately." From my seat in the back row, I could practically see the fear vibrating under her skin. Because Linda knew, just like I knew, that this wasn't some outsider's random attack. This was personal. And it had started inside our community. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, Detective Reynolds showed up at our house again. He didn't bother asking if he could come in. He just walked straight to the dining table, dropped a thick folder onto it, and looked me dead in the eye. "You need to see this." I opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails, meeting minutes, memos, all from the HOA. Specifically, from Linda Harrington and a select group of board members. They'd hired a private enforcement contractor, off the books, unregulated, to handle persistent violators of neighborhood standards. A contractor with a history of extreme measures. And according to the payment receipts tucked into the back of the folder, the contractor had been paid a hefty bonus for each successful compliance action. My hands shook as I flipped through page after page. They hadn't wanted Jesse. They'd wanted me. I was on a list labeled Priority Enforcements, Non-Compliant Residents. And the note next to my name was chillingly simple. High resistance. Target family to ensure cooperation. They'd come after my son to break me. Erica leaned over my shoulder, her hand gripping mine tightly. We're going to destroy them, she whispered. I closed the folder slowly. No court case. No polite cease and desist. They'd declared war. And they were about to find out just how badly they'd miscalculated. The decision wasn't made in anger. It wasn't made in some heat of the moment, fists clenched, blood pounding. It was made in cold clarity. Sitting at the kitchen table, Jesse asleep upstairs with his arm in a sling, Erica and I laid it out. Every fact, every risk, every move. They had crossed a line. They hadn't just tried to intimidate us. They had weaponized our own neighborhood against us. They had put our child in an ambulance. And there wasn't a chance in hell we were going to let them slither back into their perfect little lives like nothing had happened. We have to hit them where they're weakest, Erica said, tapping the HOA documents Detective Reynolds had left behind. Money, I said immediately. She nodded. And reputation. We both knew Linda Harrington and her little court of tyrants didn't care about ethics. They cared about appearances. About control. Take those away, and they'd collapse like rotted wood. By the time the clock struck midnight, we had a plan. Simple. Brutal. Surgical. We weren't just going to expose them. We were going to make sure they could never rebuild. The first move was information. Detective Reynolds had quietly leaked more internal HOA documents to us, enough to outline a whole network of shady deals. Fake maintenance contracts. Kickbacks on landscaping services. Consultant fees to shell companies owned by Linda's nephew. We spent 3 days organizing it into a devastating portfolio. Annotated. Cross-referenced. Sourced. Then Erica called in a favor, an old college friend who ran a local news blog. Not mainstream media. Better. Indie. Relentless. Unafraid to hit hard. When the story dropped, neighborhood HOA accused of corruption, endangering residents, it hit like a bomb. By lunchtime, it was trending locally. By dinner, regional outlets were picking it up. Linda tried to hold a press conference. It was a disaster. Under the harsh glare of TV cameras, she stammered and sweated and ultimately fled the podium mid-question, pursued by a pack of furious homeowners and eager reporters. But that was just phase 1. Because the second part, that was personal. Turns out, we weren't the only ones Linda had bullied. Not by a long shot. Within 24 hours of the article dropping, our phones were lighting up non-stop. Neighbors we barely knew. Old couples who'd been threatened with fines for improper mailbox paint. Single moms harassed over their kids' toys being left on the lawn. Veterans threatened with foreclosure for flying the American flag incorrectly. All of them furious. All of them ready to fight. We organized a meeting, not at the clubhouse, they tried to block us, but at the park down the street. 70 people showed up. Erica stood on a picnic table and laid it out, the illegal contractor. The corruption. The attack on our son. Faces hardened. Jaws clenched. A retired Marine named Jackson, a mountain of a man with a limp and a booming voice, raised his hand. You need bodies? You got him. A cheer rose up from the crowd. The HOA had ruled by fear for years. But fear was a two-way street. And we were about to teach them that. The final phase was precision, a scalpel, not a hammer. Every Thursday, the HOA board held a closed-door meeting at the clubhouse. And every Thursday, they congratulated themselves on how untouchable they were. Not this time. That Thursday, at exactly 6:59 p.m., dozens of us marched into the clubhouse. Legally, under the HOA bylaws, all meetings had to be open to the residents if they weren't discussing litigation. And thanks to a few Freedom of Information Act requests we'd filed through the county, we knew damn well they weren't. Linda's face turned chalk white the second we stormed in. She tried to gavel the meeting closed. Jackson simply took the gavel out of her hand and dropped it on the floor. Erica passed out copies of the evidence to every resident present. Full color, easy to read. Contractor payments. Kickbacks. Unauthorized actions. The room erupted in shouting. Neighbors who had lived side by side for years suddenly seeing the knife hovering over their backs the whole time. Someone threw a folding chair. Someone else started chanting, "Resign! Resign! Resign!" Linda bolted for the door, only to find two off-duty sheriff's deputies standing there, arms crossed. Deputies we'd hired ourselves, legally, to observe the meeting and ensure there was no disruption of order. She was trapped. And for the first time, she knew it. The aftermath wasn't clean. It was glorious. By the end of the week, Linda and the entire board had resigned for health reasons. The HOA was put under court supervision. New elections were scheduled. Federal investigators opened inquiries into misuse of funds. We didn't stop there. Civil lawsuits followed, class action, neighborhood-wide. We filed one on behalf of Jesse alone, wrongful endangerment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Linda's house went up for sale within months. Bankruptcy followed not long after. Every time I drove past her old place, overgrown, empty, pathetic, I smiled. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming something. Our home. Our street. Our lives. Jesse healed. Erica and I healed. The neighborhood. It became something new. Not perfect. Never perfect. But stronger. Because once you've seen the rot beneath the surface, you either fix it, or you burn it down. We chose both. And we built something better from the ashes.